If you can change less about yourself to become the person you want to be, it's so much easier for you.
Cardinal rule of dieting is don't be a douchebag, because this is already hard enough. Just because you can eat after 7 p.m. doesn't mean that you also have to.
Nobody really makes a good decision after 7 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. These are usually high-calorie, low-satiety snack foods.
Around that time of day, we're probably making stress decisions. That's where the wheels really start to come off. Whenever we trick ourselves into thinking it's just one snack and that's not really going to hurt. It's really easy to make a lot of unhealthy choices whenever you have an hour left to eat in the day and you have 2,000 calories to fit in. The only rules are the rules that you can stick to, causing you to improve your decision making. That's all we could ever ask for.
That's essentially a muscle itself.
If something works and that person can maintain it, that's all we could ever hope for.
You have my blessing.
Welcome to Stronger You Radio with Mike Dola. Join Mike and friends as they discuss issues to keep you healthy, fit, and on track to create a stronger you. Let's listen in now.
What's up, Stronger You family? Mike Dola here with Tanner Bays for another episode of the Stronger You blog review. This time, we're going to talk about a bunch of myths that are sometimes true. And I know in the fitness industry, we're very what you would call like a Sith Lord. And if you know Star Wars, you know that Siths only deal in absolutes. And in nutrition and fitness, we have to be open-minded. And while some of these things are very common myths, we tried to find some truth in them because we want to see what can help someone. So Tanner, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's up, man? I really enjoyed that intro. You have no idea how many times in my head still to this day I actually say to myself, only Siths deal in absolutes.
Dude, I mean, it's every day I see someone post about this isn't real because this. And I'm like, well, what are they really saying?
I actually love that you started with that. For anybody listening or anybody that might want to go check it out, we're talking about 4 nutrition myths that are sometimes true. This idea came straight from Mike. It's the baby of Mike. It's something, I don't know, I have to imagine that you were scrolling on Facebook and you saw one of our colleagues say something and then messaged me and you were like, we need to do a blog about nutrition myths that are actually true because people are getting this wrong.
Right. And it was, I think I got inspiration from Alex Viato. He is one of the most knowledgeable and scientific guys in the business. And I noticed a trend that he was kind of picking up on, I guess, the silver lining of what was actually being said. And I just thought, holy crap, there are so many that might make sense for certain people at certain times.
So that's actually what got us into this idea of why don't we dig into a little bit of nutrition myths that maybe a lot of our colleagues or maybe even we have like really kind of railed against at times. So why don't we talk about like some of the context that goes into a myth possibly being true, right? And, you know, cardinal rule number 1 of dieting, right, is don't be a douchebag whenever you're dieting. Because this is already hard enough. And it's only worse whenever somebody goes and makes it harder on us by like telling us what we're doing is dumb. It's like every SU member who's gotten like some negative comment because weighing your food is crazy, right? Like nobody should go saying that sort of thing to somebody because you never know where somebody's at in their journey or why they're doing something or what they're looking to get out of it, right? So it's important to keep all of those things in mind. And know that if we do say something that might be a little bit mean or tears down whatever they're doing with their diet, that might be like the comment that really sends them over the edge and causes them to like actually quit.
Right.
And you know, nobody wants, like you and I certainly don't want that on our conscience, right?
No, you just don't have to be a jerk about it.
You be a cool guy, right? So we started this off with what I think is probably my favorite one for people to talk about and for myself to talk about. And it's one that I'm still not even sure what I feel about. And it's eating only organic food. And the fact that people who decide to eat just organic food might actually see really great results because of that, right? But the point that we've looked to make is that it's important to understand whenever we're talking about eating only organic food But this is a really big sweeping change that somebody would be making in their life, right? Like all of their grocery buying habits have now probably done a complete 180. Wouldn't you say so?
Oh, 100%. It like I know people get, and we could have talked about this too, is they jump on the word clean, but it really does clean up their eating.
Yeah, exactly. It's people who decide to eat only organic foods tend to probably do a little bit better because they are eating foods that are traditionally viewed as clean, right? And all that means is foods that are like whole, nutrient dense, that are fruits and vegetables and lean proteins, grains, things that you know are nutritious and somebody that like partakes in a lot of health seeking behaviors would eat, right? But the important point that we make in here that I think is important for anyone listening is that eating all organic works because your food quality then takes an uptick. But it only takes an uptick because you've probably started eating things like more fruits and more vegetables and more lean protein.
Right.
It doesn't change, right, because organic food is suddenly better, right?
Right.
You know, organic food in itself, as we kind of detail with a couple of the studies that we point at in this blog, is that organic food doesn't happen to be any more nutritious. It doesn't have like an absurdly higher number of micronutrients or phytonutrients to it. The fiber that you're getting from organic fruit or organic vegetables certainly isn't any different. Right. So the only change that really happens that leads to someone losing weight happens because what they've naturally done with their decision making is started eating fewer calories. Right.
Right. It's like, why are we gonna rag on this? And I was guilty of it. I'm like, oh, you know, organic doesn't matter. And then you think deeper and it's like, well, maybe it does because this person is actually eating like an adult now. They're not eating out of boxes. They're not eating all these snacks. They're not eating just pizzas and pastas and, you know, fatty steaks all the time. They're actually eating like a human should eat.
Exactly. And we even point that out, you know, exactly what you just talked about, in that the thing that we really want people to understand is that the reason someone who eats organic might see success is because the quality of their foods have now increased and because they're eating fewer calories because of that increase.
Right.
But someone can certainly go to the grocery store and buy organic cookies and organic brownies and organic pizza and overeat those things, right? And in fact, they might have an easier time overeating those things thanks to what's called the health halo, where we kind of look at, you know, and this is a documented phenomenon where researchers can look at someone and watch them behave in a lab and watch them behave whenever they eat something that's labeled organic versus non-organic. And people on average eat more whenever something's labeled organic and report that they ate less. Right. And so it's important that we recognize our brain is a really powerful thing and it works to trick us a whole lot of times. And oftentimes the reason something works is not at all why it actually did. Right? And organic is the perfect example of that.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, right? You're you're trying to get better. You're trying to lose weight. You're trying to eat more healthy foods. So if you choose it because you think it's better for you and it actually ends up being better for you because it's vegetables, maybe it's a win.
Exactly. As long as we can get someone to a place to where they're doing something that is sustainable for them,
right,
and they're seeing changes, you and I don't care what they do to get there, right? Like that's their choice and their decision.
Yeah, it's the only thing is it might be a little more expensive, so I just want to make sure they have enough money when they can re-up their next session. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you've decided to spend your money buying organic, all we at Stronger You do is ask that you also find somewhere else to save money so you can come back to us.
Right. We have all kinds of shopping tricks.
Yeah, exactly. And you will need to save more money too, though, because it's a phenomenon. Whenever somebody's with Stronger You, they've got to buy a new wardrobe.
Yeah,
that's just an inevitability.
We typically do save people money, like eating out and drinking less, but it's going to go right towards the wardrobe.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, that's an expense that I think all of our members are okay with it.
Yeah, definitely.
So the next one on this list is this one's a really interesting one because I actually thought this one was kind of gone, and then weirdly enough, I've seen this start to pop back up more on Facebook and Instagram lately. But the second nutrition myth that we said might sometimes be true is people who stop eating at 7 p.m. see results.
This is one of my favorite ones.
This one's great, right? And it's great for like kind of confusing reasons because for a long time, like I remember being in the fitness and nutrition world, 6-7 years ago, and this being one of those myths that us trainers just constantly talked about why this wasn't true, why you didn't need to bother with eating at 7 p.m. and why an arbitrary made-up time like that didn't make any difference at all.
Right.
And I in the blog, I even say, like, I remember being an arrogant young trainer telling people that. Yeah. And then here I am, like, I now encourage so many of my clients to put a hard stop on their eating for the day because what it does is it helps us kind of flip the switch to say that we're done. Right?
Yeah, it's like coaching maturity. We no longer just look at the rules and we look at so much more of the strategy.
What a good phrase. It is coaching maturity.
Can I get on the Stronger You Instagram meme train now?
Yeah, absolutely. It is coaching maturity, though. It's recognizing that just because you can eat after 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whenever that weird number is for you doesn't mean that you also have to.
Right.
And there's a big difference, right? Because I can personally say for myself that I actually do find I feel more comfortable knowing that I have like a hard window in whenever I eat, right? Like I start eating around this time and I stop eating around this time. And it doesn't really vary too much. And I find a lot of comfort in that because those are just another set of guardrails that prevent me from like wandering into the freezer and destroying a pint of Ben & Jerry's.
Right. And you know what's really funny about this is I remember an old Chris Rock skit. He said, nobody makes a good decision at an ATM at 3 a.m. And this is kind of the same because no one, you know where I'm going with this. Nobody really makes a good decision after 8 p.m., after 7 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. These are usually high calorie, low satiety snack foods, not chicken breast and broccoli.
Exactly. And, it's an important thing to recognize. Like most of the time we're making decisions around that time of day. We're probably making stressed decisions, aren't we?
Right.
Like the day is worn on. We're probably really tired. We're probably like just exhausted from work, exhausted from the family. And it's those moments whenever it does get really, really easy to make a really high calorie, low satiety snack and think, you know what, like it's just one snack. It's not going to really hurt me, right?
Right.
And that's where the wheels really start to come off, is whenever we trick ourselves into thinking it's just one snack and that's not really going to hurt me.
Yeah. And that's why having that hard stop is like, it's a non-negotiable. You can't eat after a certain point. There's no way to get in trouble.
Exactly. The point that we even make in the blog about this is that the time that you choose or whatever number you choose doesn't matter. In fact, most people, we actually point to a study that was done in mice showing that when mice were allowed to choose their own temporal limit, so time limit for whenever they started and stopped feeding, mice intuitively ate fewer calories. And while we make a point a lot in what we talk about to say that we're obviously not mice, so any research that we show from mice, that's not to say that you should follow this exactly. But anecdotally, I think with our coaching experience, you and I can certainly say that people do kind of figure out their own schedules that work for them.
Oh yeah.
And then whenever they're made aware of that and start sticking to that, things become so much easier, don't they?
Yeah, if you can change less about yourself to become the person you want to be, it's so much easier for you.
Everything becomes night and day different.
Right.
And, kind of along those lines, I think that actually does feed into the next myth that we talk about in this one. And this is another one that's like really steeped in bodybuilding lore, but eating 5 to 6 small meals a day might actually work for some people. Which is weird. And even I think like 2 to 3 years ago, there's no way you would have caught me like spouting this sort of information off, because I was so far on the other end of like total calories throughout the day is all that matters. And that's all that ever matters. Don't bother with anything else. Right. What we do start to find as we gain more experience and work with different kinds of people is that different strategies work for different folks. And while we know that 5 to 6 small meals per day doesn't cause your metabolism to like rev up or it doesn't stoke the metabolic furnace or whatever analogy is being used to sell that idea, it does actually help people portion out their foods in more controllable and sustainable manners, right? Like people who eat 5 to 6 small meals a day are probably very regimented people who get into a habit of prepping and planning what they eat, don't they?
Oh, hell yeah, man. You're not going to eat 5 to 6 times a day and not have some structure. It really does train you to make really good prepping decisions.
It does kind of help prevent people from getting to that place of lunch. It's lunch now, and I haven't eaten for 5.5 hours.
Right.
I'm starving. I could go clean my plate. And that's where a lot of people do start to get into trouble and might wind up hitting plateaus or seeing their weight loss stall, because those meals that come a little bit more infrequently because we're hungry or tired or whatever, those meals might wind up being far bigger meals than we really want to tell ourselves they are, right?
Oh, yeah. There'll be a lot of people, I see it in the intermittent fasting community, they crush meals, and it can kind of lead to bad eating habits like binging.
It's really easy to make a lot of unhealthy choices whenever you have an hour left to eat in the day and you have 2,000 calories to fit in, right?
It's, a lot of they don't talk as much about calorie control. They're like, well, you just eat twice a day and you're okay. But do you know what I'm capable of eating twice a day? Do you know what someone with a bad relationship with food is capable of?
Exactly.
A pretty bad night.
Or someone who doesn't have, the food awareness and food education to be able to make that work, right? And that's where I also think the 5 to 6 small meals a day thing can be really useful to people, is for someone who doesn't have a ton of food awareness or is maybe just now starting their Stronger You journey or something like that. Prepping and planning out 5 to 6 meals a day forces you to get aware and comfortable with what your food is made up of from like a nutritional perspective, as far as like calories and macronutrients are concerned. You have to get comfortable with that really quickly.
Right. It forces it.
Yeah, it forces that awareness. And then it also forces that adherence and sticking to that, because it's a tiring and exhausting thing to prep that many meals and plan. And it's also just a tiring thing to maybe eat 5-6 times a day.
Right.
But you do start to feel really, I don't want to say robotic, but you feel in a really great routine.
Yeah, just kind of really structured,
Exactly. And you start to recognize the power that comes with that structure. So for a lot of our type A folks who are people who really enjoy that structure elsewhere in their life, this is one of those strategies that might actually be a way to make your life easier and help you feel like you are staying on track more often, right?
Right, and it doesn't have to be 1 or 2 meals or 5 or 6. You can do 3, you can do 4, you could do 7, you could do 4 meals and a couple snacks. Whatever really makes you hit those numbers consistently, feel good, and perform well, and that's what you're going to stick to.
That's such a good point. The only rules are the rules that you can stick to. Right. That's literally it. At Stronger You, there are so many different ways that you can make this work.
Mm-hmm.
Like And we want you to be able to embrace that and interact with that, because we absolutely feel that the only thing that everybody should be doing in Stronger You is keeping track of what they're eating on a daily basis, right? Carb and fat and protein numbers might vary all across the board, just as how many times a day someone eats, right? And that's the beauty of what we do.
It's structured flexibility. It's the perfect definition of it.
So the last one that we kind of get into, and this is one of my favorites, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, clean eating, paleo, veganism, or insert restrictive diet here are all awesome for the right people.
Right.
And this is one that another one that I definitely looked at and was like, I can't believe I'm saying this now. This is, I can't believe I've come full circle and I'm now promoting veganism.
Well, I think for the right reason, again, is the coaching maturity. We used to say, well, you don't have to do that. You can have Captain Crunch. But then you realize that not everyone should be eating Captain Crunch because it might set them off, down the wrong road. So if this is going to make them more adherent, these eating styles can absolutely work with Stronger You. It is not mutually exclusive.
Not at all. And, I make a point in the blog to say that clean eating, however you want to define that, paleo and veganism all actually share 3 traits that just about all diets share. And that's that they try to get you to limit your consumption of refined carbs, limit your consumption of added fat, and limit your consumption of added sugar.
Right.
And it's important that we recognize that any diet that gets you to do those things is a diet that is getting you to do good things.
Right.
So that diet, if it's causing you to eliminate more carbs, added fats, and added sugars, then it's also causing you to improve your decision making. And as health professionals, that's all we could ever ask for.
That's a good point.
And that's
improving decision making. Like, that's essentially a muscle itself.
I think that might be like the hidden muscle that Stronger You members learn to flex that they don't really recognize. Is they have such an improved decision making process because they become so aware. And people who go paleo or vegan, a lot of them who tend to follow it all the way through and follow it to the nth degree and to the letter of the law, those people do become incredibly aware of what they're doing on a daily basis because of that dietary ideology. And we don't think that awareness is necessarily such a bad thing, right? Because that awareness is what's going to allow you to kind of sustain what you're doing from this point forward and well into the future.
Yeah, I think long-term success, short-term success, everything is about awareness. So many people come through our doors because they don't really know what's happening. And the tracking, and even if you're eating paleo and you're cutting these things out, it's going to basically uncover all these little faults that may have been happening.
It's an easy thing to think about, actually, if you think about an archetypical Stronger You member who might be a woman in her mid-50s who loves a couple of glasses of wine each night as she gets home from work, right? And feels like she doesn't have a ton of weight to lose or anything like that. That person might decide to pick up paleo because a friend in the gym mentioned it. And in the process of picking up paleo, they start to learn that, well, wine's not really going to fit in my program right now, so I kind of have to give up my wine for a few weeks.
Well, it's funny you mention that because I have heard many paleo followers mention that wine is okay because it's fermented fruit, which I thought was ridiculous. And we know they just wanted to drink.
People will make an excuse for it. Yeah. I'm not even shocked. Like, our ancestors drank wine. Why couldn't we?
Yeah.
But it's the point being, that person who goes paleo and then has to give up their wine and then sees that they start to lose more weight than they thought, they might actually start thinking about, like, oh my gosh, was the wine really that culprit? Or have I just changed how much I'm eating, right?
For anyone listening, it is the culprit, just to be clear.
Oh, yeah. that's the overarching point there, right? That we have to make sure people understand is that it does tend to be the culprit. And following one of these approaches just helps you walk along the path of figuring that out. And that's it. That's why these sorts of things might work well, is because they're a way for people to engage with developing more awareness about what they're doing and what they're eating and drinking on a daily basis.
That's what it's all about, man.
Absolutely. It's what we're preaching every day. So we're kind of getting to the end of this one. Like we said, these are 4 nutrition myths that are sometimes true. That depending on the right context, with the proper nuance, in the right situation, we can absolutely make a case for somebody wanting to eat organic food, stop eating after 7 p.m., eat 5 to 6 small meals a day, or even go full-on clean eating, paleo, veganism, or anything like that, right? And the overarching point that we just hope people understand throughout all of these is that different approaches can work for just about anybody.
Right, and
these things are highly variable.
And you can't just take it as, like I said in the beginning, as such an absolute. There might be a reason behind something. As there are some crazy myths out there that make zero sense, but now I'll look at them and I'll see what is really trying to be said.
The reason something might work could be completely wrong, but the fact that it works stays true. And ultimately, that's the thing that we really want to wind up focusing on, is that if something works and it works for that person and that person can maintain it, then we don't care. Good. We're glad you found something that works. Yep. That's all we could ever hope for.
That's a successful experience with Stronger You. If you find
Absolutely.
the strategy that works for you, you have my blessing.
Yeah. So we've got this one taken care of. Next week, we'll actually be rolling out another accompanying podcast to talk about what's on the blog. For that episode, though, we're actually going to be digging into one of the more controversial, confusing, any list of adjectives for things that people fight over. We're going to be talking about sugar. And we're going to be talking about all about the history of sugar. Where did it come from? How did it make its way into our diet? We're going to be talking about why sugar may not be as evil as it's played out to be in the media, but also why it's something that we still have to pay attention to and learn how to make work into our day-to-day eating patterns. Because if we're not careful, it can lead to some, either us gaining weight or some poor decision-making or something along those lines, right?
Right. It might not be sugar, but it might be your relationship with it.
That's exactly it.
Thank you so much, man. This is awesome. I'm having a really good time on these blog reviews. Stronger You family, thank you so much again for joining us. We are so pumped to get these things out as often as possible, and we will see you on the next episode.
Looking forward to it.
Stronger You Radio is a broadcast wellness production powered by StrongerYouFit.com. Content copyright Stronger You. Executive producer Frank Sardella. Thanks for listening to Stronger You Radio. For more information on the podcast, visit StrongerYouPodcast.com.